The entertainment world has always been home to Hollywood and the West, holding many talented pioneers including Alfred Hitchcock and Steven Spielberg, and even successfully bringing its appeal to the international audience. From critically acclaimed films to cash cow blockbusters, the American entertainment is undoubtedly the most influential of them all. But what of the ever-growing entertainment medium called anime? Known for its short-cutting animation, classified as a children's cartoon, and popular for its weird tropes and themes, anime is essentially any animation from Japan. This broad term accounts for a multitude of shows, films, and shorts ranging from kids shows Pokemon and Hello Kitty to the dark psychological films Ghost in the Shell and Perfect Blue. Today, anime has gradually been becoming a medium more well known in the West. In 2013, we get to see the legendary Hayao Miyazaki direct his supposedly final anime feature film, The Wind Rises. The landmark anime movie, Akira, saw a remastered Blu-ray release for its 25th anniversary. The not-so-heavily inspired mecha movie, Pacific Rim, hit Hollywood. 2012 saw the beloved Toonami's revival on television. Pulp Fiction director Quentin Tarantino commissioned production IG to make the origin of O-Ren sequence of Kill Bill Volume 1. The Matrix, heavily influenced by anime movie Ghost in the Shell, became a sci-fi hit in 1999. In 2003 saw anime's first win at the Oscars with Spirited Away. But before any of this happened, where did anime start? It surely is not some new medium phenomenon that arose spontaneously during the beginning of the 21st century, because everything has its beginnings. Before Pokemon, Dragon Ball, the Gundams, and even before Astro Boy. Before all of that, before the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that petrified the world. The Roaring Twenties in America, Mickey Mouse's debut, and even the death of Emperor Meiji. Anime as we know it draws its history all the way back to the 19th and 20th century. With that being said, take out your history books and prepare for a time machine trip down memory lane. The first anime ever is a 4-second hand-drawn animation on celluloid called Katsudo Shashin, approximated to have been created in 1907. It wasn't until 2005 when the work would be discovered. Though speculative, this discovery suggests that the first animation ever was produced right in Japan. But even before the first animation was produced, historians of pre-cinema claim that the origin of animation was set off by the invention of the magic lantern during the 17th century from Europe. It wasn't until 1803 when the magic lantern would make its first appearance in Tokyo, Japan. Magic lanterns are basically wooden boxes that project images onto a screen using a set of 2 lenses. Screenings from the magic lanterns usually lasted around 2 to 3 minutes, and these screenings had someone called a benshi, who was a narrator that aided the audience into understanding what is being shown on the projector. These guys were essential to the movie, because they made the movie flow, as movies were silent during this era. It was not the movie star who was the highlight of the screenings, but the benshi. They were the guys who would get featured in the early Japanese film magazines. The Magic Lantern showings traveled throughout places in Japan, playing mainly for children, and it was Tokyo that was the center of attention. This trend would continue until cinema became popular. While Magic Lanterns and benshi were hitting their peak, Japanese filmmakers were looking at the West for ideas in filmmaking. The early 20th century was filled with experiments from Japanese filmmakers, which are either undated, lost, or even both. Anime production was largely artisanal and small scale, as very few people and animators were involved in the productions of anime. It wasn't until 1917 when signs of professional and dated works started being made. Oten Shimokawa's chalkboard animation, The Story of the Concierge Fukuzo Imokawa, was the first professional Japanese anime playing in theaters in 1917. 1917 was also the year when cinema was becoming the attraction to theaters, and in turn leading to the gradual decline of the Magic Lanterns. Simultaneously, the rise of foreign media soon prompted the government to employ the beginnings of movie censorship due to the radical views on rebellion in the live-action French film Zigomar that played in Japanese Japanese theaters. During this time, Japan was under political distress from Emperor Taisho's rise to the throne following Emperor Meiji's death. Children animation was also dropping drastically, as cartoons were prone to denial of the intended audience from the censorship. Despite the hardships animators were beginning to face, there were those who were able to leave their marks on history. One such guy is Seitaru Kitayama, who today is hailed as the father of anime. The 1920s for anime marked a shift towards a more industrial output. Kitayama founded the first anime studio in 1921, Kitayama Eiga Seisakuji, where he began to employ industrial techniques in the productions of anime. Though many of his industrial techniques and processes simply drew inspiration from foreign studios, it's undeniable that his division of labor is an important aspect to the history of Japanese animation. His system was one of the most efficient at the time, splitting labor into just enough component parts and sharing the same artistic work between 2 or 3 people. Subsidies and incentives were becoming more popular during this time, being given to animators for the production of instructional films, which in turn further diminished the prevalence of children's animation. While primitive animation techniques such as cut paper and stop motion were still being used, cell animation was gradually becoming popular amongst animators. The role of the benchi was further decreased as sound and music were beginning to be incorporated into anime. And on September 1st, 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake struck the Tokyo and Yokohama region, which had erased many of the long-forgotten anime and Japanese films of the early 20th century. Despite the losses to the history of Japanese cinema, the Great Kanto earthquake has been considered by many historians as a watershed to its history. The film and animation industries fled the conservative leanings of Tokyo and benchi groups and migrated to Osaka and Kyoto, where anime would flourish for the next 3 decades. As the tensions built up following Hitler's rise to power and Japan's increasingly militaristic government with Emperor Showa, otherwise known as Hirohito, media was undergoing strict censorship in order to enforce cultural nationalism. Children animation was still widely discouraged, with only very few ones being released, and educational films and documentaries were promoted with the 1939 film law. Many works depicted Japan beating the crap out of the United States, but when really they were the ones getting the crap. Mitsuyo Seiyo's box office hit Momotaro's Sea Warriors was followed up by Momotaro's Divine Sea Warriors, standing as anime's biggest feat at the time. Being commissioned and animated by the Navy, it was Japan's first anime feature-length film, which glorified victorious Japan on the battlefields of World War II. 4 months later, any glory of Japan was shattered and eclipsed by the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Many years ago, there raged a terrible storm, the worst that had ever been known in China.
Following Japan's defeat in World War II, anime's focus was tossed aside in turn for the reconstruction of Japan. But that isn't to say that nothing happened with anime during this time. American occupation of Japan lifted the stringent censorship, exposing Japan to American life and as well as Disney movies. In 1948, Japan Animated Films was founded, which would later in 1956 become Toei Animations, the same studio that would bring us many series such as the Dragon Ball franchise, Sailor Moon, the Digimons, and One Piece. Anime was still being produced, but in the form of shorts and commercials. Until then, Japan would be exposed to a decade's worth of animation and movies from the United States that would spark the golden age of cinema in Japan. Japan's greatest live-action movies emerged during this period, including Seven Samurai, an adventure drama film which tells the story of 7 samurais hired by a village to fight bandits. The iconic monster Godzilla, one of the most influential films that has spawned a countless number of remakes, parodies, and ripoffs, was amongst these films as well. And also Tokyo Story, which tells a subtle, heartfelt story of an aging Japanese couple who traveled to Japan to visit their children. Anime saw its first prominent work since Momotaro's Divine Sea Warriors when Toei Animation released their debut movie in 1958, Hakujadan, otherwise known as Panda and the Magic Serpent in the States. Drawing a wide variety of influence from Disney, the film is considered to be the first anime in a modern sense. Toei Animation would then release a wide number of works the following year, showing the potential that animation studios possess. With foreign competition from massive studios like Disney and the slowly recovering Japanese economy, Toei Animation was forced to employ harsh working conditions. This resulted in a strike and as well as many workers leaving or forming anime studios. Amongst these animators were the great Hayao Miyazaki and Osamu Tezuka. And it was Osamu Tezuka who would recruit many of the employees from Toei Animation to his newly formed Mushi production that would set a storm in the anime industry with the advent of television as well as Mushi's release of Astro Boy. And all this marks the beginning of the 60s.